Richard Mather was a Puritan minister in colonial Boston, Massachusetts. He was father to Increase Mather and grandfather to Cotton Mather, both celebrated Boston divines. Biography. Mather was born in Loughton in the parish of Winwick, Lancashire, England, of a family which was in reduced circumstances but entitled to bear a coat of arms. He studied at Winwick Grammar School, of which he was appointed a master in his 15th year, and left it in 1612 to become master of a newly established school at Toxteth Park, Liverpool. After a few months at Brasenose College, Oxford, he began in November 1618 to preach at Toxteth, and was ordained there, possibly only as deacon, early in 1619. Between August and November 1633, he was suspended for non-conformity in matters of ceremony, and in 1634 was again suspended by the visitors of Richard Neile, Archbishop of York, who, hearing that he had never worn a surplice during the 15 years of his ministry, refused to reinstate him and said that it had been better for him that he had begotten 7 bastards. He had a great reputation as a preacher in and about Liverpool, but, advised by letters of John Cotton and Thomas Hooker, he was persuaded to join the company of pilgrims in May 1635 and embarked at Bristol for New England. On the 3rd of June 1635, Richard, wife Catherine, and children Samuel, Timothy, Nathaniel, and Joseph all set sail for the New World aboard the ship James. As they approached New England, a hurricane struck and they were forced to ride it out just off the coast of modern-day Hampton, New Hampshire. According to the ship's log and the Journal of Increase Mather, the following was recorded: at this moment, the lives were given up for lost, but then, in an instant of time, God turned the wind about, which carried them from the rocks of death before their eyes. Her sails rent in sunder, and split in pieces, as if they had been rotten radges. They tried to stand down during the storm just outside the Isles of Shoals, but lost all 3 anchors, as no canvas rope would hold. But on the 13th of August 1635, torn to pieces, and with not one death, all 100+ passengers of the James managed to make it to Boston Harbor. He arrived at Boston on the 15th of August 1635, in the midst of the great colonial hurricane of 1635. As a famous preacher, he was desired at Plymouth, Dorchester, and Roxbury. He went to Dorchester, where the church had been greatly depleted by migrations to Windsor, Connecticut, and where, after a delay of several months, in August 1636 there was constituted by the consent of magistrates and clergy a church of which he was teacher until his death in Dorchester on the 22nd of April 1669. He was buried in the Dorchester North Burying Ground Works. He was a leader of New England Congregationalism, whose policy he defended and described in the tract Church Government and Church Covenant, discussed, in an answer of the elders of the several churches of New England to 32 questions, an answer for the ministers of the colony to 32 questions relating to church government that were propounded by the General Court in 1639. He drew up the Cambridge Platform of Discipline, an ecclesiastical constitution in 17 chapters, adopted by the General Synod in August 1646. His reply to Mr. Rutherford is a polemic against the Presbyterianism to which the English Congregationalists were then tending. With Thomas Welder, Thomas Mayhew and John Eliot he wrote the Psalm book, or, more accurately, the whole book of Psalms faithfully translated into English meter, probably the first book printed in the English colonies. He was the author of Treatise on Justification, Family. Mather married in 1624 Catherine Holt to Holt, and secondly in 1656 Sarah Hankredge, the widow of John Cotton. Of 6 sons, all by his first wife, 4 were ministers. Samuel, the first Fellow of Harvard College who was a graduate chaplain of Magdalen College, Oxford, in 1650–1653, and pastor of Church of St. Nicholas within Dublin. Timothy Mather 1628–1684. Also known as the Farmer Mather, as he was the only son who was not a minister. Nathaniel, who graduated at Harvard in 1647, was vicar of Barnstable, Devon, in 1656–1662, pastor of the English Church in Rotterdam, his brother's successor in Dublin in 1671–1688, and then until his death pastor of a church in London. Eleazar, who graduated at Harvard in 1656 and after preaching in Northampton, Massachusetts, for 3 years, became in 1661 pastor of the church there. Increase was a Puritan minister and a major figure in the early history of the Massachusetts Bay Colony and province of Massachusetts Bay. Horace E. Mather, in his Lineage of Richard Mather, gives a list of 80 clergymen descended from Richard Mather, of whom 29 bore the name Mather and 51 other names, the most common being Storrs and Schauffele.